Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Neurodiversity Goal podcast with me, Jude Morrow. And I am really, really excited to bring this episode today because it's an issue that we've thought about an awful lot over the last kind of few years. I know on the podcast we like to discuss and highlight inequalities a lot, and we've talked about things like inequalities experienced by neurodivergent people in workplaces. We've talked about the inequalities experienced by autistic women and girls and basically non-males. But one thing that I would have loved to have talked about more, and I'm delighted to really dive deep into it today with my guest, is the inequalities experienced by uh, parents of Black autistic children or Black autistic adults, because the diagnostic average age is much, much higher. There's still kind of ingrained inequality in the system. And my guest today is really at the forefront of promoting equality and DEI for Black autistic people, young and old, across the world. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast Vincine J. Brown. Vincine, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I've been dying to talk to you for so long. I know that's been this episode has been in the pipeline for quite a while, and
Right,
I've been
right.
really, really looking forward to it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jude. I am so happy to finally meet you in person and to be on this podcast. This is just great. And
And
yes, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I
The
said
floor is
yes,
yours.
and I am a big advocate for neurodiversity, and particularly in the African American community, but just neurodiversity in the schools. And I'm on a mission to help Black autistics to excel in school and work, and also to support parents of how they can help their child live independently as a Black autistic and succeed in this world. Yeah. So
What I kind of wanted to ask first, like I do at the top of nearly every episode, is to kind of go through your own personal journey.
okay.
And I mean, of course, the challenges that you faced along the way.
Yeah. Well, I have three kids who are neurodivergent. I have two sons and a daughter. I have a son who has Asperger's and dyslexia. I also have a daughter who has ADHD and has a specific learning disability. And then I have a son, which the exceptional schools term as gifted. But all of those things come with their challenges. One of the biggest things that as a mom of Black children who are autistic was I could not find resources. As we talked about earlier, the diagnosis is late. And yes, it wasn't until he was about 13 or 14 that we officially received a diagnosis, but I knew much earlier that there was a challenge that he learned differently. But I could not get the support nor help. And so for me, my journey was to dig into those resources, to research, to read, and to really advocate for him. So it started with the IEP. Once I got the IEP diagnosis, and then went to the meeting for that. And then once I got that, I then was referred to a clinician and a therapist. We went that route. And then it was, okay, what do I do now? Okay, so where's the support once your child gets the diagnosis? And I knew that he needed different services than the typical child in the school system. What did I, there was nothing available. So I had to do some research, find some things, and said, hey, I am not going to focus on that box, right? I look specifically of telling my children, we're going to look to your strengths. We're not going to worry about the non-strengths. You're not going to fit on the box. I blew up the box. We're going to create our own box. And that's exactly what we did. We created our own box for each of their paths. With my one son, he was, had Legos, likes to very creative, invent things. So technology was a natural fit for him, was very good. Now is working in the technology field as a software engineer, working with NFTs. So I don't know if I was supposed to share that, but anyway, he works for NFTs. He works for the federal government, so and then my daughter, who was diagnosed early with a specific learning disability, has ADHD, is a communications guru, social media, graduated her college, and her senior year receives the social media communications and media award, and then went to travel abroad to Costa Rica to do some work. And then my youngest son is getting 2 degrees, one in public health and the other one in nutrition and food science, which will graduate in December. And so the path for me was that you need to focus on their strengths. We identified what their superpowers were, and we focus on that, and to say that what they have is just as important as what other children's have. Their gifts are just as important. And so for me, I focus on that, found the resources, and with the proper support, they were able to succeed, because every child can succeed. I personally believe that success is learned. And what does that mean? That means that with the right tools and the right support, your child can be just as successful as any other child. Because it's not about, this child's more intelligent, that brains are different, just like people are right-handed, people are left-handed, some people can sing, some people are good in math, some people are good in science, some people can write. It's what the brain is wired for. So it's not a disorder. It's not anything wrong with your child. It's that God-given abilities and strengths to make an impact in the world. And so we looked at, okay, this is your purpose. This is your purpose. And so with my one son, he did a TED Talk on life on Mars. A 14-year-old does a TED Talk about life on Mars. And now here we are. That was like 7-8 years ago. And what are we now? We're talking about life on Mars. He went to, receive invitations to go to the White House and talk about technology. And so, I like to use for my children and my story as a model, as encouragement for those moms and Black children who are autistics, those Black adults, because it can happen for you. Now, how can it happen for you? Well, there's a lot of work to be done, because as we know, the statistics say that 29% of the population is autistic. 89% of that population is either unemployed or unemployed. And there's really no reason for that to exist, because of the superpowers and the talents that these children have, and the gifts that they bring to society. For me, the whole Black inequity that Black autistics face, and neurodiversity in general, is a social justice issue for me.
Absolutely
And
is.
so for me, I'm thinking about, okay, as a Black female, there's a lot of equity in the workplace, but I have 3, Black kids. I have 2 Black males, and the statistics say if they're not steered, the school to prison pipeline. I don't know if you heard that expression, but usually at the age of in the 4th grade, the society kind of more focused on, instead of educating Black boys, they steer them to activities that will leave them in prison. And so my son being autistic, I was determined that was not going to be the path. That was not going to be the path, that he wasn't going to be put into a box, be labeled as a child that had a behavior issue, or a child who, couldn't get along with others and all that stuff. And when anybody meets him, it's like, you can't judge a book by its cover. And people always think, well, a person who's autistic looks like this, or I don't know what that is. When you meet a person who's artistic, you meet a person who's autistic. You meet a Black person, you meet a Black person. Everybody has their unique and different personalities. But the common thing is those who are artistic and I don't like to use the label highly function, but don't present what society necessarily thinks an artistic person looks like or should act like, they kind of get discarded and thrown away. And that was kind of our story, well, he does well in school, or he does this, or they do that, she's social, or, she writes well. And so for the African American community, it is very difficult to get those resources because of those things. And it typically starts in the IEP process. One, because parents aren't aware of the diagnosis. And then culturally, it's like, the mental health issue in the Black community. We don't want to talk about it. And the reason why we don't want to talk about it is not so much that we don't want our kids to get help. It's because of the stigma and the labels that are already exist of trying to succeed as a Black male, as a Black woman in the world. And so the pain that the parent experienced, oh, this is one more thing my child has to face. So we're just going to try to get along. I'm just going to push them through. We're going to give them a talk, and, everything is going to be fine. But unfortunately, autism is real. There are tools out there. There's medication if your child has to take that can assist and support them in being successful. And there's nothing to be ashamed about.
It isn't.
The research has only been done since the 1990s. I am sure, because we know it's a genetic type of thing, that I am neurodivergent as well. But the importance thing is getting the support. The importance is being an advocate for your child, to go into an IMP meeting and say, hey, I need these services for my child. 2 of my children went through the normal public school system track, and my son, we found a wonderful community, a school that supported Asperger's and autism, where he was able to excel, where he was able to play sports. I've read all these crazy things about they can't play sports. He played soccer, he played basketball, he went kayaking, and was in a community that supported him, that said, you're okay just the way you are. And that's where the success comes in, because they said, you're okay just the way you are. He got the support and the tools to be successful. So success can be learned. You have to give people access. And I think the inequity comes in is I don't get access, because it's already say, okay, here are the tools that you have, which is great, but I can't get in the gate. I got my bat, I got my ball, there's the field, but I can't get in. So if I can't get in, I still am faced with a challenge, And so, for me, it's just trying to encourage your child that, hey, whatever you set your mind to, you can succeed at that. We just got to find you the right tools, the right access to do that. And that has really been my journey. And that has been my journey for my kids, to make sure of finding programs. They were in 4-H, they've, studied abroad, they've done NASA programs. And, simply because as a parent, I believed in them and I advocated for them, is that we're going to use your strengths so you can be successful. We're going to use your strengths so that you can live independently. And yes, does my son still need some type of level of support now that he's in the workplace? Well, yes. But just like any other person who goes in the workplace that learns in a different way than what is the standard way that they are teaching or training people to, because there are like 7 or 8 different learning styles, right? And normally teachers only use like one learning style, or maybe 2. And they're saying, okay, if that child doesn't fit into that, well, they're having problems and they can't learn, and I don't know what we're going to do. But they haven't really accessed the resources. One of the things I share is that my youngest son, was in a magnet school, a gifted program, and the teacher was calling me and was like, "Oh, he talks, he's being disruptive and stuff like that, and he finishes his work so quickly." And I'm like, "Okay, well, isn't this a school for kids who finish their work quickly? So, what are your resources to engage these students? I can give you some resources if you would like me to, but that's the whole thing in terms of being advocating and pushing that envelope, because in our world there are multiplicity of personalities and gifts, and to be a more inclusive culture, we have to embrace all gifts and learning styles, and however they show up. You know,
Exactly.
when you go in an interview, if a person is going to do X job that requires ABC skill sets, and you're interviewing them and you want to talk about Y skill sets, D, E, and F, when they only need A, B, and C, and you disqualify that person because they don't have D and F, that's just not realistic. You know, you have to look at the different hiring process and look at the skill. What am I looking for? It's like baking a cake. Okay, so I have all these different ingredients and I need it's called for some salted butter. All right. Well, I'm gonna go, and normally I use this regular butter, or maybe I use parquet or margarine. That's not even butter. And I'm going to try to put that in the mix where your cake is not going to come out that well. Okay. Because the ingredient requires for salted butter, but you may not like salted butter, but that is what you need to make a good cake. And so the talents and the skill sets that the neurodiverse community brings, the neurodivergent community brings, is what society needs. It's what society needs now. And even though it's getting more attention because we're now in the technology age, and this is these are the gifts that we bring forth to take us forward, that we have as a community for the technology age. Our gifts have always been there and have always been important to the workforce. They've always been important to the workforce. It's just that they have not been utilized in the right way. And because of just the natural evolution of technology, it is now more apparent that they need these skill sets in order for us as a country, as a world, to evolve further. We're getting the recognition. But I just wanted to be clear that, the neurodivergent community has always been important, and the gifts have always been important to society. So it's not this new thing. This is the new item that's being marketed on a block. I mean, this is you're talking about human beings. You're talking about people's lives, and you're talking about as a social justice issue in terms of how can I get these people back into the workforce, back into society, to show them that they are important, that they do make a difference. I mean, every time I read that statistic of 89% of people unemployed, it just like blows my mind, because I'm thinking like, that's just, I can't even wrap my mind around it, because it just seems kind of like so unreal. But as you talk to so many different people who are on a neurodivergent spectrum, it's a real thing. It's a real thing, because they are not utilizing their gifts. And the main thing is, I think, particularly for Black artistics, it's because we don't have access. We don't have the tools. We don't know where to go. There's no one real place in terms of resources to go. And the reality is, as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, okay, that the privilege that exists for other people of non-color, if I am for example, a autistic or neurodivergent female, okay, there is some issues or challenges that I may face entering the workforce. But as a Black neurodivergent female, there are additional challenges on top of that. And that is one of the things that the culturally, the African American community is hesitant about having that diagnosis attached to them because of the stigma and the obstacles that they have to do. But I'm here to break down that wall, to blow up the box and say, hey, go out there, and once you, as they say in the church, once you name your demon, it loses power. And so we have a responsibility, not only to our children, but to ourselves, to make sure that what you birthed in this world succeeds in this world. And you must advocate for them. You must understand that success is learned, that they can have the tools and the resources and can live, be successful. They can excel in school, they can excel at work, and they live independently. And they can, start businesses. I mean, there are just so many different avenues of opportunities, and there's more than one way to solve a problem. 2 plus 1 equals 3, 3 plus 0 equals 3, 5 minus 2 equals 3. So there are different ways you can tackle that. And because, it's not just one way. And I think as a society, we really have to get away from that. We really have to get away and look at the broader, thing, a little spice to a dish, makes it a little better. And so I like to think that we're the spice in the world that's making the world a little better.
Yeah. And what, I wanted to kind of get back onto a couple of points, that you
Okay.
made was, I mean, the first one, you say your son was diagnosed at 13 or 14. And I mean, that's very, very late by today's standards, because I think the average age, and I mean, if anybody's listening that can email me the right kind of figure, I'm just working off the top of my head on the fly, where I
Right.
think it's like the average age mostly is 5 or 6, but and whenever it comes to basically those who are autistic and not white or male, then it's much, much longer, because most kind of autism research, which is mostly oppressive and points out deficits and everything else, it was mostly done with white boys and men. It wasn't done by any, but there was no diversity in research and talking to people and stuff like that. And I think it's great that you're highlighting this and really championing it, because we've been saying it for years. We've been saying it for a long, 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 long time. Is that different backgrounds shouldn't come into it, or even gender, and I think it's just ingrained in the medical community. But hopefully, with Vincine, with the work that you're doing, that you can, drive forward positive change. But I see, like, even on your LinkedIn, I would urge everybody to connect with Vincine on LinkedIn. Is that I'd put out a couple of posts that the word coaches seems very overused these days, and you've come up with a different one, and one I've never heard before, and I think it's a great term, is neurodiversity architect. Can you? I know you're taking action and you're getting involved in a lot of things.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I suppose my question is, what is a neurodiversity architect?
Well, I coined that term because if you're an architect, you build and you create things, right? And
Mhm.
so when you think about the brain being a bridge to build things, so I wanted a term that kind of conveyed that. So, I'm bridging the gap, among, intellect, aptitude, and mastery to success, that success gap. So that's why I came with the neurodiversity architect. I'm an innovative, I'm a creative myself. And so I'm very good at coming with ideas and seeing how things, okay, you need this, and here's the solution. And so architects, they create the structure that houses the components that allows other people to interact with them so you can create a product, So you need an architect to come up with the design of the house, the structure of all the rooms, and you need somebody that's in. Once you have the architect, you have somebody that builds the house, and there's somebody supplies the materials for the house, And so in being a neuro architect, a neurodiversity architect, I mean, that's my role, I am that bridge for the neurodiversity community to walk over so that they can create the life that they want. And so
that's what people need, because often, even whenever it comes to like diagnostics or anything that's out there, really, there's can be hard for parents to know kind of where to go next. So, I mean, we're coming near the end of 2022 now. Have you any exciting plans for 2023?
for 2022, oh wow, there's so much. The most exciting thing that's happening for me in 2022 is that my youngest son is graduating on December the 13th. And I would have, as a single parent, successfully put through 3 wonderful neurodivergent children through college. And they've all graduated in 4 years, which is, I think simply amazing. And that, the typical person graduates takes 5 years to get out of college. And the fact that they're all neurodivergent and have been able to use their strengths and push through and with the proper support to graduate in 4 years is just, it's makes my heart full. And that is the most exciting thing that's happening for me for the end of the year. And also I am, looking forward to continuing this work and really, launching out there to assist as many Black autistics as I can. And so I'm just gearing up in preparation to launch that work fully for 2023.
Excellent. And for anybody that's listening that would like to reach out to you, where can people get you? What's your .coms, your social
Right.
medias?
Yeah. They can reach me on social media, on LinkedIn. They can reach me at support at iam10.org. I am, my name, I'm Vincine Brown. I'm on Instagram. My Twitter handle is Reverend Roadrunner 1 on Twitter, but probably the best contact is support at iam10.org or out on LinkedIn. You can reach me on LinkedIn. So Vincine Brown on LinkedIn. So you need to search my name and it should pop up. So
Absolutely fantastic. Listen, Vincey, I've really loved this conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm sure everybody else listening to this certainly has as well. So I'd urge everybody reach out to Vincine, talk to Vincine, because neurodiversity architects are what we need. People who will take action, make stuff happen, and ultimately give families the tools and the mindset for success. So, Francine, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I've absolutely loved this, and I'm sure everybody else will too. And I just want to thank everybody for listening into this episode. Don't forget to leave your reviews on whatever podcast forum that you're listening to this on. And once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time for another episode of the Neurodiversity Gold podcast.